activist, organizer, gardener, and freelance journalist. He's the founder of activist alliance, the Houston Free Thinkers. With the Free Thinkers, he successfully expelled the TSA from Houston's bus system. He is also the founder of independent media group, the Conscious Resistance Network. His writings appear on the Liberty Beat, benswan.com, tonystyles.com, the Anti-Media, and more. Derrick can assist with journalism, coalition building, local organizing, and video confrontations. Ladies and gentlemen, Derrick Broze.
Hey, thanks for that introduction, man. Welcome everyone who's tuned in. Thank you guys for checking out what the Solutions Institute is building, and of course, thank you to everyone at the Solutions Institute for having me on here. As Bobby said, I'm going to be speaking about how you can hopefully apply some of the tactics we used in the city of Houston to kick the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, that you're used to seeing at the airport in the blue uniforms, off your bus lines, your train lines, subway lines. I know some other cities have similar operations like they tried to do here in Houston. So let me tell you a little bit about what happened in Houston in 2012, what we did, and just some tips that you might be able to use in your area. So in about, I think it was April 2012, March or April 2012, the Department of Homeland Security, the Harris County Sheriffs here in the city, the Houston Police Department, the TSA, and some local politicians came together to hold a press conference where they announced the beginning of a new program, a national program that was called Bus Safe. And I can't remember what it stood for, but that was an acronym, Bus Safe. And Houston was going to be one of the first cities to launch this program. So they held a press conference downtown at one of our major bus lines where the rail line and the buses all intersect, announcing the beginning of this program that they said was to catch criminals, terrorists, things like that. And they announced it in the morning, and they were able to do it at least for 1 to 2 full days before anybody really noticed anything and backlash began. But first they announced the program, and as part of Bus Safe, basically anybody who rode the bus or the rail lines, student, whatever color, whatever you are, if you rode the bus and the rail lines, you would be subject to random searches, from drug sniffing dogs and to random ID checks. So the TSA would have been on all the platforms at random, bus stops where people are just waiting to catch their bus home from work or going to school or to see their family or whatever they're doing. And the TSA would have been able to come up to them and just say, papers, please, let me see your ID, where are you going? They said even specifically they would be asking them questions about where you were going, where you're coming from, just all up in your business. So one of our members, as part of the Houston Freethinkers, happened to be going from school and was in the area, and he snapped several pictures of this press conference and then sent them to me and other people within the group. And we decided to, put out our own press release, and we wrote an article with the pictures and just, sort of a call to action to everybody who is listening in the city. And then I started to do some research, and I found there was a lawyer in the city who was also a bit upset about it. And he had mentioned that there was an upcoming board meeting for the Metro. Metro is the company that runs Houston's rail and bus service. And he had been planning to go to the next Metro board meeting. These are, of course, they have these every month or maybe a couple times a month. Most corporations do this. They have their board meetings and they're open to the public. But of course, the public's generally uninterested or unaware of these meetings. With the system we have here in Houston, Metro, this company, this little board of people, is making decisions that obviously affect the millions of people. There's close to 5 million people in Houston. So let's say a million or so ride the bus. I don't know the exact numbers, but however many that number is, which is large numbers in this city, they will be affected by the decisions made by this board. So the first beginning of the action was to go to this meeting and to voice our opinions against this. So the Houston Freethinkers, we organized, we had a meeting and said, all right, we need as many people as possible. This is a chance for us to show other cities around the country that Houston is not going to take these type of tyrannical actions. And this is, I think, a really important note to make here is that governments, local governments, federal, state governments, they're always going to take steps to, to start restricting freedoms. And once they do these things, it's up to each of us and our local community to push back, because if you don't push back, then these things continue. And, you'll see by the end of this that if we hadn't pushed back, this program likely would have been in place and would continue to expand. So we organized as many people as we could. I think the first meeting we had about 15 people from our group, and then there was several other lawyers who ended up showing up. So we go to the Metro Board meeting. It's an early morning meeting, and the local news had actually caught wind of all this by then. They realized that people were upset. For the most part, the people that they interviewed and talked to downtown said that they were okay, as long as they were safe, they weren't really worried about it. Other people felt like they were upset about it. And when we went to the meeting, some of our, I guess, our bullet points here were the fact that this program, after the several days that they did it, all they netted was people that had marijuana in their pockets. I think they said there was one prostitution arrest. There wasn't any violent criminals. There weren't any terrorists that are arrested. These are just everyday, regular people that were getting caught up in this program. So that was one of the things that we wanted to bring to their attention. But myself and several other people took our turns speaking to the Metro Board and expressing our concerns. I think I quoted Benjamin Franklin or something and said that, we believe in freedom over security and that we weren't going to take this from them. And all the lawyers stood up and told them, you're going to make us very rich because you're going to have a handful of Fourth Amendment lawsuits if you continue to do this. You're violating the people's rights. And the board themselves feigned ignorance. They said, "Oh, this is the first time we're hearing about this program. We had no idea this was going on. Let's just talk about this another time." And I shouted out, "We want to talk today, because all these people, they couldn't just come back any other day. They came there specifically, took off work to come express their concerns. This was going on in their city to these members." So when I yelled that, things got a little tense, but they ended up allowing us to continue the meeting, and we lodged as many complaints as we could. One by one, people just went up there over and over and telling them they thought this was unfair and unjust and illegal and unconstitutional. And their response was to then say, "Okay, let's set up a second meeting. We'll set up another meeting next week, and it'll be just focused on this. We'll talk about the specifics of this program, and we'll hear your concerns, and we'll make a decision on them." So that was a success at first. Immediately following that, we were able to network outside with the local news and do a couple interviews, and we got covered on our local ABC station. I think the CBS station covered it as well. So that's another important aspect when you're building these campaigns, is to get in communication with the local media. The media has to pay attention because obviously the average person is coming home from work and just sitting down. They watch whatever's going on in the news, and if the local news is informing them that there's this resistance, this fight in their community against being groped and being searched unfairly simply for choosing to ride a bus. If you don't have a car, if you don't have the option to use a vehicle, the bus might be your only option, and it's unfair that you have to face search and seizure, violation of your rights for that. So we were able to network with the local news and get coverage and get the word out to other people that, hey, there's a second meeting. If you couldn't make the first one, we were successfully able to get a second one. So again, we got all our people together, as many people as we could bring the second time, and came back even stronger. The lawyers came back, and we just one by one told them why we thought this was wrong, how this was going to hurt them. And I think what really got them noticing this is that this didn't have to take any government involvement. This was simply people recognizing that, hey, this is an institution. This is the bus program we have in the city. It's the only bus program available, and I'm sure they get subsidies, which allows them to not have any competition. So this is your only option if you need to ride the bus in the city. And they're telling you that you have to get searched randomly, that you'll basically be treated like a criminal if you're riding the bus. And people were not going to stand for that. And that's what we decided to come let them know. I ride the bus in the city, so this is something that personally affected me. So I was happy to go stand up and make sure that this wasn't going to continue in the city. So basically, by the second meeting, within that second meeting and in the press afterwards, the Metro Police Department chief, the HPD chief, and the board themselves started to back off the program, and they lied in the media. They rescinded their statements. There's actually a press release that we still have a copy of, the original press release that came out that they issued on the internet that announced the program. It wasn't even titled Bus Safe. It didn't say anything about getting searched. It said a new bike program, and then as part of that, they listed, we were also going to be searching certain people on the buses and things like that. They just kind of hid it in there. Then later they said it was a mistake, that they weren't going to be randomly searching anybody. They were just going to be talking to people and checking IDs, and that was a misprint. Somebody misspoke too soon, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we know that to be a lie. We spoke with people. We saw people who were searched, who had had their IDs, had to hand their IDs over, who had the dogs come on the buses, and I said they were able to do this for a couple of days before we started to push back. So we know that they were lying, and this is, I think, what you might be able to expect as you start to push against these programs. So to wrap it up here, by the end of that second meeting, they announced that they had overwhelming pushback, overwhelming dissent against this measure, and that they would be ending the bus safe program in Houston, barring some unforeseen circumstances like a terrorist attack or something. Or they did mention the possibility that, for instance, if Houston is to host a major sports event like the All-Star Game or the Super Bowl or something like that, they might bring the TSA back for that. So we stayed on our toes and aware. There's been a couple instances where I happened to see TSA workers walking downtown, maybe catching their bus to the airport or something. But I doubled back and came to find out, does this TSA worker, did they bring them back? And I've stayed in contact with the board themselves. And I think that's another important thing to note is that you just have to put the pressure on these people, whether you're dealing with local governments or local institutions like these boards of corporations. When they know that their bottom dollar is being threatened, that people will actually boycott them, or that people are coming out and getting the attention of the media, they don't like that. These companies and governments, they don't want bad press. Corporations more than governments, because the government, no matter how much bad press they get, they're still in power for now. But if a corporation gets bad press and people stop using their product or stop riding their buses, then they start to lose money, and that's when they really care. So to me, I think the happiest part that I can say about this victory is that it didn't involve government. We didn't have to go to the city council even, or to even any institution of government to say, please help us stop this groping and this violation of our Fourth Amendment rights. We went straight to the company itself that was causing the harm and made it clear to them that we were not going to take it anymore. And I think that if we apply the same model, if you look in your area and if you have TSA on your bus lines or on your subway lines, on your train lines, do the same thing. Find out the companies that are involved, that are signing the checks there, that are partnering with the TSA. Do a little bit of research, see who's in your area, see when that program started. It started again, like I said, we were one of the pilot cities in 2012. So it's spread, I think, Chicago, a few other cities that I've tried to keep up with. And in the future, I'll probably do a video to, rehashing some of these things to help people, because I think what we need to do is find what works in our city. This is what worked in Houston. You guys can use this as a template, a model for your city. And then once you're successful, tell us, what did and didn't work in your city, because it'll probably work differently. But the best advice I have is to focus on the companies that are partnering with the TSA and the DHS. Go to their board meetings, lodge public complaints, get the attention of the media, and you'll see some responses from them, and hopefully you'll have some success.
Fantastic, Derrick. Great presentation, great discussion. Got some questions for you.
All right, let's do it.
Let's start with how were you able to bring the Lawyers Association on board, and what role do you think threatening to sue played in the win?
I will say that I do believe the lawyers being involved probably helped our cause quite a bit. The organization is called the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association, so they're just a organization of criminal lawyers that have been around, I think, since the 60s, that meet on various topics, and obviously they have some weight in the city. They're well known. So I would suggest finding a similar organization in your area that handles those type of cases and bringing to their attention how the lawyers played a role here. Now, I think every voice that came there and spoke had an impact, every single one of us, because they saw all demographics, all backgrounds of people. But I also think that it's a powerful message when you have a lawyer say, I'm from the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association, and these are all with me. And then 50 lawyers stand up and they tell them that they will sue them if they don't back off.
Fantastic. Do you think it's important to maintain a good relationship with political figures such as those on a city council?
I think it's important to develop and maintain relationships with politicians on any level, if possible. I myself had some personal conflicts with some of them, just because you go to these meetings, and if you've had any experience going to city council, especially your first time, you're like, yeah, I'm participating in the public process, I'm letting my voice be heard. And oftentimes you go there and you're just completely ignored, or at least that's been my experience in Houston. And with our city council, we get that a lot. That if you're expressing an issue that they're not interested in going into because it's uncomfortable politically, or they're just, they don't want to hear it, then it can be disappointing. But we've also developed some positive relationships with several city council members, and that has helped me receive information ahead of time, where they'll email me or send me a text message and say, hey, this bill or this measure is coming up in city council. You might want to see if people care about this and want to come make some noise about it. So there has been some benefits to that. And there's also been some frustration. But overall, if you can develop a positive relationship with your local city council and have somebody that's going to be in that position, or if you yourself are interested in being involved in local politics, then I'd say that's a positive thing.
Wonderful. Before I get to the next question, there's a shout out to you I want to tell you about from Fija, thanking you and the Free Thinkers for including jury nullification literature in your outreach at the NBA All-Star Game weekend a couple of years back when it was held in
Absolutely.
Houston. So they wanted to make sure and say hello to you on that. I thought that was great.
Thank you.
So let's say someone wants to take what you learned from fighting the TSA and apply it to, say, taking on fluoride in the water supply. How could they apply some of the lessons you learned to their fight, whether it's the TSA, fluoride, or even potholes, whatever the issue might be?
So, as I said a few minutes ago, the situation I think is unique because it allowed us to avoid the government body completely and to go directly to the local institution that is working with the federal institution, in this case, Metro Incorporated, working with the Department of Homeland Security, the federal government, and local partners. Now, if we were to apply that idea towards fluoride, as you mentioned, or to any other situation, I would say let's look to that in that same scenario. Now, I'm personally involved with the fight against fluoride in Houston, and unfortunately, we haven't had the same impact just yet. We've done a lot of awareness, spread a lot of awareness, but we haven't been able to find a local institution. What we have in that situation is you have an out-of-state company that is partnering with the local government, the city council, and in that situation, that's where you would have to directly go to the city council. Now, in our city, we have an unusually strong mayor, which has made it more difficult for us to work with passing things on a local level. So, say this TSA situation had been a measure that the city council passed, right? They said, okay, well, we are now making it where people can legally be searched on buses because of terrorism or whatever they want to say. If that was on the books, then I think we probably would have had a more difficult time getting this done. I don't think we wouldn't have been able to do it. We definitely could have got the numbers and come to city council, and we probably could have just direct our energy that way. But since we know that we have a mayoral position out here in the city, that in Houston, that is unusually strong, more strong than in any other city from what we've seen, like almost dictatorial in her powers or in the position's powers, that it's been difficult to get ideas that the mayor and the city council are not already on board with. It's been difficult to change their minds. It just involves a lot more lobbying, of going to visit them individually, talking with them privately, and you have several institutions, and I'm using the fluoride example for right now, but you have the water treatment center, and you've got the city council, and then you've got a contract with a corporation. Now, if that corporation was based locally in some way, and we were able to, I guess, threaten their dollar on a local level, then we could probably use this same strategy, the same tactic. But overall, I think that the idea is the same. And my 4 or 5 years of just being focused on local action, this TSA thing isn't the only thing that we push back against. I mentioned fluoride. There was also a food ordinance here in the city they passed that made it illegal to share food with more than 4 or 5 people. And myself and hundreds of other people were involved in the push to just take over city council meetings and go there week after week until basically the city decided they were not going to enforce it and just leave it on the books unenforced. And several other things like that, where it's just about organizing, finding the people in your community that care about these topics, and then finding the people that care about it but don't even know that they care about it yet. And that that gets into some bigger topics like organizing press releases and reaching out to the local media, going out to the streets. As you mentioned, we like to go out to the streets often and just pick a certain topic and pass out flyers. So we'll go downtown to like any of the stadiums, basketball, football, whatever's in season, and wait for people to come out and just pass out flyers, talk to them. There's usually outside, there's already people giving out flyers and all sorts of things. So people are usually willing to take that information. They might not necessarily listen to you right away, but at least you're putting things in people's hands, and hopefully they're going home and reading it. So I think that's always valuable, is having face-to-face conversations, getting out on the streets and educating people, because like I said, if I wasn't as involved with this group as I am, then this TSA thing might have slipped right by. There's still people here in Houston that we talk to that don't even, are just now realizing that we did this, that we were able to effectively kick the TSA out of the city, and they never even knew it happened.
Amazing. It's amazing how that works in our society. I know that recently in Houston there was another big controversy involving the mayor and the churches. involving some kind of a directive relative to the gay ordinance, I believe it was in the city. I'm sure you're more up to speed of that being into Houston. What was that about exactly?
It was an ordinance called the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance, or the
That's what
HERO,
it was, right?
the HERO Ordinance, which basically, I think it got a little bit more convoluted than it needed to be. And honestly, I think with what some people have speculated is basically we have a mayor that just in the last week was voted as the #1 mayor in the country and the 4th best mayor in the world. So she's definitely in the mainstream, in the limelight, and she's Houston's first, or I think maybe even the first openly gay mayor of any major city. So some people think that this HERO ordinance was kind of, I guess, her showing some love to her community, to the gay and transgender community, because what it would have allowed is basically Houston Equal Rights Ordinance. It would have allowed those who are changing gender, transgender, to choose which bathroom they wanted to go to. And so this caused a huge backlash with Houston's more conservative and religious communities, that they signed all these petitions and brought them in to stop the ordinance. And it's been a big fight. That's one that I personally stayed out of, just because, like I said, it gets real convoluted. And I think that the issues are a lot more simpler than maybe the ideas of bringing in people's sexual preference and their religion together. That can get real messy for a number of different reasons. But the city's been fighting them back and forth. They tried to turn away the petitions of those pastors and those in the religious community. And from what I can see, they definitely did their work. They didn't like what happened. Whether we agree with it or not, they went through the process. They didn't like that this measure got passed. They came out and spoke at city council over and over, saying that they didn't support it, but the city council passed it anyways. And these people resisted or pushed back. Whether we think they're right or wrong, they pushed back, and they got these petitions signed and turned them in. But so far, the city has denied them and said that they didn't fill them out correctly. And I think it's in the middle of the Texas Supreme Court right now, actually.
Well, I mean, the political process, I mean, they're, like you were saying there, I mean, basically, you don't always have to agree with what happens, but it is great that people are engaging. Certainly, that is an important aspect of what you mentioned, no doubt about it.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you coming on board today, Derrick. Of course, like working with you as an advisor on the Solutions Institute. Very good presentation. Thank you so much for appearing today.
Yeah, thank you again, and thank you to everybody who's watching and who's listening, and I hope that you guys will choose to use the Solutions Institute more and more. I really think this is a great tool. Props to Dan Johnson, that you guys and everybody else who's involved. I think this is going to be a great way for us to come together on these ideas and really organize across the country and across the world. So thank you guys.